Welcome to Mythos AI, your source for Cliff's Notes on complex subjects. Join Anna and Phil for yet another engaging conversation.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking a closer look at the captivating art of Scottish painter Jack Vettriano. You've shared some really intriguing source material with us, and yeah, we're ready to sort of peel back the layers of his instantly recognizable, often quite controversial paintings.
Yes, there's certainly a lot to unpack there.
Our mission today is to explore that unique eroticism in Vettriano's work. We want to understand how he builds narratives almost like, well, like a film director, using these powerful visual clues and what many people call a cinematic flair.
That cinematic aspect is definitely central.
And we'll look at how his art creates this tantalizing sense of anticipation and voyeurism, drawing you, the listener, in as an active participant in these scenes of desire. So let's get into it and dive deep into Vettriano's erotic storyboards.
Sounds good.
Okay, so for those maybe encountering Vettriano's art for the first time, it's often described rather vividly as Norman Rockwell in the bedroom. What does that actually mean, and why has the whole question of eroticism in his paintings stirred so much debate over the years? It's a compelling comparison, actually, because Vettriano, he really takes Rockwell's familiar style, that narrative approach, telling a whole story in one picture, and he infuses it with this very distinct erotic charge.
Right.
So you imagine these elegant couples, these solitary figures, but they're put into these clandestine scenes or really charged encounters, often behind closed doors. Critics, though, have often been quite dismissive. Yeah, labeling his work things like titillating kitsch or even softcore cliche. One very famous critic called it a double cheeseburger wrapped in greasy paper.
Ouch.
Exactly. And many others found it sexist or even pornographic because of the focus on women in lingerie or scantily clad. Vettriano himself, though, he pushed back on the pornography claim. He said his intent was always to evoke desire, imagination, not just crude display.
And his defenders, they point to the narrative depth, the powerful mood in the paintings. They see each image almost like a movie still from some film noir melodrama, just packed with untold backstory. And that cinematic quality of the way it hints at stories yet to unfold, that is absolutely key.
So he leaves things open.
Deliberately. He leaves questions tantalizingly unanswered, and that positions you, the viewer, as both a voyeur looking in and a storyteller filling the gaps. His eroticism really lives in that space of anticipation and imagination. It often engages what the film theorist Laura Mulvey called the male gaze.
Right, the male gaze.
But, and this is interesting, he complicates that gaze because he frequently obscures or hides the man in the painting, which effectively invites you to step into that role to gaze upon the women who are on display.
That's a fascinating start. Before we delve deeper into the style and those theories, maybe tell us a bit about Vettriano himself. His path to becoming a recognized artist sounds quite unconventional.
Oh, it certainly was. Jack Hoggan, which was his birth name, came from very humble beginnings, Fife, Scotland, born in 1951. He even worked as a mining engineer for a while.
Holy mining.
Yeah, and what's remarkable is that he was entirely self-taught as an artist. He adopted his mother's maiden name, Vettriano, in the 1980s, and that's really when his career started to take off.
So when was the breakthrough?
That came in 1988. He submitted 2 paintings to the Royal Scottish Academy show, and both sold on the very first day.
Wow.
Huge. And by the early 90s, his popular appeal was just immense. His 1992 painting, The Singing Butler, it became one of the best-selling art prints in Britain. Eventually sold for a record £744,800 in 2004.
Incredible price.
And he was even awarded an OBE, the Order of the British Empire, a major national honor, in 2003. But despite all this public adoration, they called him the People's Painter, he remained largely, well, outside the charmed circle of the established high art world.
So the critics weren't won over?
Often, no. They remained quite scathing, calling his work populist kitsch or just retro illustration. And for years, no major UK public museum acquired his art. He found that personally painful. He once said the accusation of painting by numbers felt almost like violence.
I can imagine.
Vettriano himself openly cited influences like vintage Hollywood cinema, classic pulp novel covers. But then, something shifted a bit. In 2013, there was a major retrospective in Glasgow. It attracted record attendance, and it began to shift critical perception somewhat.
How so?
Well, some critics started drawing parallels to Edward Hopper, seeing Vettriano maybe as a painter of solitude, loneliness, and the disconnection of lost souls. He passed away in 2025 at 73, leaving this very distinctive niche in art, perhaps, precisely because of his unique cultural position.
That context is so crucial. Okay, let's explore some of the frameworks that help us dissect Vettriano's unique approach to eroticism. First up, this idea of the male gaze.
Right. So Laura Mulvey's essay from 1975, it fundamentally introduced this concept, the male gaze, describing how visual media often frames things from a heterosexual male perspective, effectively presenting women as objects for male pleasure.
And you see that in Vettriano.
In his paintings, which are these still images, you clearly see that dynamic at play. The women's bodies, or their carefully chosen poses, they become the central spectacle. Think of a painting like The Parlor of Temptation.
The one with the red dress.
That's the one. A woman in this fitted red dress sprawls across a sofa, fully lit, while the man watching her has his face cropped out. He's literally depersonalized, except for his implied gaze. And you, the viewer, are placed right there alongside him, sharing in that act of looking.
But you said he complicates it.
He does, because his women are frequently acutely aware they're being observed. They strike these deliberate poses. On Parade, for instance, a woman shows off her stocking legs, arches her back provocatively. Her body language is practically an invitation to look. And this self-conscious performance, it aligns perfectly with Mulvey's idea of to-be-looked-atness. Vettriano also masterfully cultivates this sense of voyeurism, making you feel like you've stumbled onto a private scene.
Right.
Yet he often puts in what's called an intradiegetic spectator, a figure inside the painting who is also watching. In Beautiful Losers II, there's a second man, sitting calmly, smoking, watching the main couple embrace.
Ah, so he mirrors the viewer's role.
Exactly. It creates this chain of gazes that paradoxically can kind of diffuse the power and comment on voyeurism itself. So the women, while they're displayed for pleasure, often seem to set the terms through their poses, maintaining a surprising kind of agency.
You've emphasized how Vettriano's eroticism is more about suggestion, not explicit display. How does the work of Roland Barthes on eroticism and narrative help us understand this?
Well, Roland Barthes argued very powerfully that true eroticism isn't really in what's fully revealed, but in what's suggested, what teases with the unseen. He famously asked, "Is not the most erotic portion of a body where the garment gapes?"
The gap.
Exactly. It's that intermittence, the glimpse, the fragmentary reveal that genuinely excites and launches desire beyond what it permits us to see. For Barthes, pornography shows everything, leaves no room for imagination. Eroticism deliberately holds something back. It engages your desire to know, compels you to fill in the blanks.
And Vettriano's paintings fit this.
They're textbook examples, really. They are full of what Barthes called jouissance, this kind of intense pleasure that comes from narrative openness, the freedom it gives you. Explicit sexual content is generally muted. He consistently shows the before or the after, the anticipation of touch, rather than the act itself.
Like the pause before something happens.
Precisely. A woman's clothes might be half off, a man's hand rests suggestively, but the scene deliberately stops there, mid-breath, to game on. A man pins a woman against a wall, his hand between her thighs, but the frame cuts off right before any final outcome. You have to imagine what's next.
Or dancer for money.
Right, she's preparing, not performing. Again, compelling you to write the next scene in your mind. Barthes also talked about delay being inherently erotic, and Vettriano's whole body of work explores this delayed gratification. An unlit cigarette, a glass of champagne taken away as a prelude, a dance that hasn't quite become a kiss in night geometry. These details all point to the pause, the almost, compelling you to fantasize.
His paintings definitely have that strong cinematic feel. What are some specific cinematic codes he borrows, particularly from film noir?
Well, many observers feel like Vettriano's essentially storyboarding, a film that never got made, one frame at a time. And the film noir influence is incredibly clear, especially in his palette and lighting. You see those dramatic chiaroscuro contrasts, light and shadow, maybe neon glows, single lamps, isolating figures.
Like in Night Calls, too.
Exactly. The scene is lit almost like a spotlight, highlighting the woman's form, her stockings, against these very dark edges. And his mise en scène, the whole setup, borrows heavily from noir iconography.
Fedoras, trench coats.
Men in fedoras, yes. White dress shirts, loosened ties. Women in those sleek red dresses, stilettos, stockings. Man of mystery, with the unseen man's arm taking a glass from the robed woman that feels like it's pulled straight from an old detective movie.
Right.
And night geometry consciously echoes that famous embrace from Gone with the Wind, but Vettriano injects it with this really charged eroticism. He frames his scenes like a director, too. Sometimes a wide shot like Beautiful Losers II. Other times a mid-shot or a close-up that crops figures, especially men's faces, like in The Parlor of Temptation.
Why crop the faces?
It anonymizes the man, focuses all your attention on the woman. He uses props of suspense too, a half-empty glass, a burning cigarette, like clues in a mystery. In an imperfect past, there's literally a vintage film projector beaming light.
Very direct.
Very. It explicitly uses cinematic apparatus, reinforcing how Vettriano's eroticism is tangled up with the idea of watching. And while his paintings don't usually show crime, they absolutely carry that noir mood danger, melancholy, often set in lonely city interiors or hotel rooms.
It's really interesting how his work seems to blend these different styles. How do artists like Edward Hopper and Norman Rockwell help us frame Vettriano's work comparatively?
Yeah, at first glance, Hopper and Rockwell seem like unlikely bedfellows for Vettriano, but let's look closer. From Edward Hopper, Vettriano definitely inherits this powerful sense of alienation, the poignancy of the fleeting moment. Hopper depicted solitude, loneliness, and the disconnection of lost souls.
And you see that loneliness in Vettriano.
Definitely. Many of his scenes, even the erotic ones, carry this distinct undertone of loneliness. Characters often don't meet each other's eyes. They're in the same space, but there's this psychological distance. Like the figures in Beautiful Losers II, physically close, yet they seem withdrawn. Vettriano's use of light also echoes Hopper, isolating characters, highlighting those emotional gaps.
Okay, and Rockwell.
Norman Rockwell, on the other hand, represents those, heartwarming, idealized slices of American life. Vettriano takes Rockwell's basic idea, the stage narrative scene, telling a story visually with lots of detail, and he transplants it into this world of erotic noir.
So similar technique, different world.
Exactly. Both use body language, expressions, costumes, props to convey a specific story moment with clarity. Vettriano just dials up the sexual and emotional heat. He moves from Rockwell's innocent couples to these illicit trysts. The total Beautiful Losers II even feels like an anti-Rockwell statement, doesn't it? Rockwell's subjects are usually winners.
That's a great point.
So Vettriano's work exists in this sort of in-between space, visually accessible and narrative like Rockwell, but tonally often wistful, unresolved like Hopper. He captures this really unique blend of sensuality and longing.
Let's dig deeper into this idea of the paintings as storyboards. How does he use these frozen moments and missing frames to really pull us in?
Well, each painting functions like a single frame, pulled from a larger storyboard. And it's deliberately chosen, frozen, right at a moment of maximum narrative tension. He effectively cuts the story. He shows you a critical moment, but not its resolution. So he leaves these missing frames, before and after, that you are compelled to imagine.
He wants the viewer to fill the gaps.
Precisely. Vettriano himself said he tries to create a world and leave holes in the story for the viewer to fill in. You get this almost uncanny feeling the scene started before you looked, and it's definitely going to continue after you turn away.
You sense the before and after.
Right. Compositions often suggest movement caught in a pause, like a dance held just before a kiss, or a cigarette still burning, marking time. In Night Geometry, that dramatic dip is caught right at the peak of motion, like the film pause at the crucial second. You have to mentally supply the frames around it, which really deepens your engagement.
Can you give another example?
Sure, think about The Temptress. A woman sprawls on the balcony, only her lower body visible. There's a half-empty wine glass, a wine bottle nudged by her stiletto towards someone unseen. It's a frozen moment, just thick with unspoken narrative. A cliffhanger in a single frame, forcing you to fill in that missing presence. Many compositions are like these self-contained storyboard panels, establishing character, setting, mood instantly, letting you piece together the sequence. And by leaving scenes out, Vettriano basically makes you a co-narrator. This suspended narrative is a key part of his eroticism, inviting you back again and again as you reinterpret the plot.
So the erotic charge comes more from the about to happen than the it's happening.
Absolutely, yeah. Anticipation is the very beating heart of Vettriano's eroticism. The moments he chooses to depict are almost always about the build-up, not the payoff. The erotic thrill is concentrated in those charged pauses, those drawn-out preludes. I mean, think about the 10 paintings we're considering today. None of them show a sexual act reaching completion. You get passionate embraces, clear physical contact, provocative posing, but never explicit sex. Even nudity is rare. Women are often in lingerie, maybe men usually fully clothed.
So it emphasizes the lead-up.
Exactly. Those electric moments where desire feels most intense, precisely because it hasn't been satisfied yet. The kiss is always about to happen, or maybe just happened. In Night Geometry, his lips are near her neck, but the actual kiss isn't depicted. The excitement is in that tiny space, that millimeter of air.
And game on.
The title itself implies this erotic game that's only just starting, an initiation. Her expression is described as caught somewhere between surrender, lust, and erotic charge. That exquisite ambiguity belongs to the height of anticipation. It aligns perfectly with Barthes. Eroticism lives in the suggested, the not yet.
Like in Man of Mystery, too.
Spot on. The woman waits. The unseen man's hand takes the glass. It's a ritual gesture, implying the next step. Her parted lips, her expectant gaze, they mirror your own anticipation. Vettriano also highlights anticipation by sometimes showing the aftermath, like in an imperfect past, where the eroticism lingers in reflection. You could almost say he eroticizes the pause button, leaving you right there, tantalizingly on the threshold of gratification. It's a kind of sweet torture, often more intense than satisfaction itself.
His paintings are so dense with symbolism. Let's talk about some of those recurring visual motifs, starting with, say, stilettos, stockings, and cigarettes. They seem ever-present.
They really are, and they're much more than just details. They're very carefully chosen props that evoke fetish, glamour, and maybe a hint of transgression. Stilettos, almost always on the women, are classic symbols of feminine sexuality, even power. They change posture, creating this whole language of seduction.
How so in the paintings?
Well, in the parlor of temptation, the woman playfully kicks her stiletto-clad feet. In the temptress, a stiletto subtly nudges a wine bottle, a teasing, almost controlling gesture. And then black sheer stockings, thigh-high or gartered. They're classic fetish objects, too. They speak to a sort of bygone era of glamour, and they hint at incomplete undress, which feeds right into that anticipation.
Like in On Parade.
Exactly. Her black stockings are highlighted, her coat leaves her thighs exposed, drawing your eye right to that band of skin against the dark nylon. It perfectly embodies Barthes' idea of revealing while concealing. Stockings often signal a clearly sexual scenario, and Vettriano's women seem to wear them very knowingly as part of their own ritual of seduction, which suggests agency, even control. And the ever-present cigarette, it serves multiple roles. It could be a time marker. The slow burn implies time passing. It sets atmosphere. Think of smoke swirling in that noir lighting, and it's a symbolic prop.
Symbolizing what?
Well, in the parlor of temptation, the smoke drifting up from her cigarette underscores her composure. In Dancer for Money, a lit cigarette smolders while she applies lipstick, creating this almost cinematic spotlight effect, showing her nonchalance. Symbolically, cigarettes can suggest rebellion, coolness, maybe nervous energy. Both men and women often smoke, implying a shared vice, perhaps complicity.
Do the men use them differently?
Sometimes. In Beautiful Losers II, the seated observer holds a cigarette, looking very calm and control. In Night Geometry, the woman holds one during a passionate embrace, suggesting she keeps some composure. An unlit cigarette, like in Night Calls 2, might indicate distraction or interrupted intentions. These small details really do speak volumes in the narrative.
Beyond those key items, what other visual motifs are central to Vettriano's erotic language?
Well, red is undeniably crucial. It's the color of passion, danger, sensuality, and he uses it very deliberately, very frequently. A red dress is almost a character itself, like that fitted red dress clinging to the woman in the parlor of temptation. It dominates the palette, draws your eye immediately.
And other uses of red?
Red lipstick, obviously. Red lampshades, like in Game On. Or heavy red curtains framing a scene, like in Night Geometry. They all signal this emotional and physical heat. Even a man's red tie pointing towards the woman in parlor acts like a visual arrow of desire connecting them. Fedoras and other masculine props are also key. Vettriano's men often have that throwback-style suit, suspenders, fedoras, very iconic of film noir detectives or gangsters. While fedoras aren't in every single painting we're discussing, that formal attire, crisp white shirts, cufflinks, waistcoats, it signals this dressed-up world of role-play and elegance. Men are typically more clothed than women, which creates a visual power dynamic.
Right.
The champagne glass in Man of Mystery, taken by the man's hand with the glinting cufflinks, that's a genteel yet assertive gesture. And the projector, in an imperfect past, could almost be seen as a stand-in for the male gaze itself, literally casting light. And then various other props of desire just pepper his scenes: wine bottles, glasses, mirrors, photographs, candles. The half-full wine glass in The Temptress sets up seduction immediately. The empty mirror and unlit candlesticks in Beautiful Losers II are symbolic blanks, perhaps suggesting a lack of self-reflection or a melancholic note to the intimacy. Photographs within paintings, like in Man of Mystery, hint at private lives, maybe intruding contexts. These props all contribute to the atmosphere secrecy, nostalgia acting as storytelling elements that cue you into the scene's emotional layers. Each detail really is like a chess piece in his carefully staged tableau of seduction.
You've given us such a vivid picture of his style and themes. Now let's bring it all together by looking closely at those 10 iconic paintings. Could you describe each one, really immerse us in the scene, and connect it back to the concepts we've discussed?
Absolutely. Let's step into these worlds, starting with The Temptress. Picture a woman reclining on a balcony chair, but we only see her lower body. Her legs are crossed onto a table, casual yet provocative. She's wearing a short black dress and stilettos, stark against pale light. Her right hand dangles, holding a cigarette languidly. It's a gesture of detachment, maybe control. A half-full wine glass sits near her calf, a bottle farther off.
Suggesting someone else is there.
Exactly. These details imply an unseen companion just outside the frame. She almost pushes the bottle with her stiletto, a teasing, controlling act. The minimal city backdrop makes her naked legs the absolute focal point, framed like a cinematic still. Her languid sprawl feels as much performance as relaxation. She's tempting by placing herself in a story you can't fully see, leaving you to fill in those missing frames. The eroticism here is purely in that anticipation, that frozen pause. Now, the parlor of temptation. Imagine a woman stretched diagonally across a sofa, on her stomach. She wears that fitted red dress clinging to her curves, hem riding high, black stilettos pointing playfully up. Her dark hair falls around her face, which is painted with red lipstick. A lit cigarette is poised, smoke drifting up, underscoring her composure. Behind her stands a formally dressed man, but his upper body is cropped out. We only see his suit and a red tie, pointing right at her.
His presence is implied.
Implied, but dominant. He stands upright, hands in pockets, surveying the scene. The room glows with saturated red walls, creating this claustrophobic yet intimate stage. She lies knowingly in his line of sight, her body a display, but he's the dominant, unseen power. The eroticism comes from that tension, the space between them. It's a frozen cinematic frame where dominance and complicity mix, and it pulls you in as a shared voyeur. Then, on parade, visualize a woman framed in a doorway, leaning slightly into an unseen space. She wears a deep pink coat, but no skirt, just black self-supporting stockings. The frame cuts below her knees, focusing right on her posture. Her arms grip the door frame, arching her back. Her face is hidden, but her head is turned outward, suggesting flirtation.
The contrast is striking.
The pink coat and black lingerie, yes. The doorway itself is like a stage, a threshold between private and public or performative space. She isn't portrayed as a manipulative femme fatale, but more like a woman aware of being seen, deliberately inviting attention. It's a frozen moment of anticipation and flirtation. Night calls a second. Here we see a woman balancing on a coffee table, her body posed in very deliberate display. She's in a body-tight black dress, revealing thighs covered with those self-supporting stockings. Her back arches sharply, hands pressed against her hips, red nails amplifying the erotic charge. One stiletto-clad foot rests on the man's shoulder, gently kinning him.
So she's dominant here.
Visually, yes. The man leans forward in an armchair, eyes closed, face caught somewhere between surrender and reverie. His white shirt sleeves are undone, a loosened black tie. One hand caresses her calf, the other dangles, holding an unlit cigarette. The woman clearly dominates the pose, her stance commanding, her body a living performance. It's a tableau of mutual erotic exchange, staged in that dramatic chiaroscuro lighting where power itself becomes the game. Game on. Picture a woman pressed against a wall, shoulders and arms stretched upward. Short black dress, self-supporting stockings visible. Her legs aren't flat against the wall, her back is arched. Her face is half hidden behind the man's head. Expression unreadable, described as somewhere between surrender, lust, and erotic charge.
And the man?
He's in a white shirt, suspenders, dark trousers. Leaning into her, head next to her ear, mouth grazing her skin or whispering. His left hand pins her arms. His right is between her legs, clearly pleasing her. He seems in complete control. She has surrendered. The room glows from a red lampshade, casting long shadows. A framed picture on the wall echoes that theme of voyeurism. It's an assertive, yet intimate, erotic choreography staged with cinematic precision. Man of mystery. Envision a woman reclining on a sofa in a loose white bathrobe, its folds part to reveal her bare legs, slightly spread towards the man outside the frame. Her dark hair falls freely, head tilted, expression of quiet anticipation, lips parted, gaze fixed toward the unseen man. Only his arm is visible, crisp white shirt sleeve, reaching in to take a half-empty champagne glass from her.
The exchange implies connection.
Exactly. The gesture suggests he's about to join her, or is just arriving. The room is muted, dark shelving, a discreet, framed photograph, intimate but understated. The eroticism is purely in the suggestion, her relaxed pose, her focused glance. The exchange of the glass is a ritual. It's a cinematic pause before something happens. Dancer for money. See a woman in a short black dress, sheer self-supporting stockings. She's leaning against a counter, one leg raised onto a stool, thigh prominently displayed. Her pose seems casual, yet deliberate, a performance of indifference maybe. Left hand on her thigh, right holds red lipstick to her parted lips. A lit cigarette smolders, smoke rising lazily into the cone of light above.
What's the setting like?
An untidy basement looks like a makeshift dressing room, but a single bare bulb isolates her in this theatrical spotlight. The eroticism comes from that collision of glamour against the mundane, cabaret poise against domestic clutter. She prepares, performing first for herself, but inevitably for you, the unseen spectator. She wields this knowing control in an imperfect past. A black-haired woman sits in a chair. A vintage film projector beams bright white light across her body towards an unseen screen. She gazes directly at the projection, her profile revealed in concentration, lips sharp red, expression absorbed. She wears a small, tight black dress, bare shoulders, legs crossed in shadow, stilettos catching the light. A white collar suggests formal wear, or maybe fetish.
Is she alone?
No. Her hand rests lazily, a cigarette between her fingers, smoke mingling with the beam. Behind her, there's a standing figure, perhaps an older woman, maybe an androgynous man in a dark suit and tie. Their face is partly in shadow, stance authoritative yet detached, overseeing the projection. The room is cloaked in shadow, a private space doubling as a stage for performance and surveillance. The eroticism feels stylized, estranged. Her body is an object of spectacle, yet her refusal to acknowledge the figure complicates the scene. The title suggests secrecy, memory, a tableau of desire refracted to cinema, staged and mediated. Beautiful Losers the Second. Imagine a blonde woman in a long black evening dress, standing before a white fireplace, her sight to us. One thin shoulder strap has slipped, exposing her bare shoulder, suggesting intimacy. Her arms are loosely folded, posture soft, hesitant, head tilted, hair obscuring her face. Behind her, a man in a white shirt and black waistcoat embraces her closely, head bent into her neck, hands around her waist.
How does she seem?
His body language is possessive, yet hers appears ambivalent, caught between yielding and retreat. But then, in the lower left, another figure intrudes. A seated man, relaxed, smoking, observing the couple. His presence destabilizes their intimacy. The large mirror above the fireplace reflects nothing. Unlit candlesticks rest on the mantel. The eroticism is charged by this triangle. The woman as the central figure, embraced by one, observed by another, her ambivalence making her the site of tension. No one seems triumphant. It's a storyboard frame of desire fractured into unequal parts. And finally, night geometry. We see a man and a woman locked in that dramatic embrace before a tall window, framed by heavy red curtains under a full moon. The man, dark suit, holds the woman in a deep tip, face close to her neck, eyes closed. One hand grips her lower back, pulling her close, the other rests firmly on her thigh. The woman, dark-haired, red lipstick, leans back, neck exposed. Her long black robe has fallen open, revealing her thigh, black stockings, and exposed chest with black lingerie. One arm rests on his waist, the other on his shoulder, holding that poised cigarette, smoke rising faintly. A pearl necklace catches the light. The staging is overtly theatrical, as we said, invoking Rhett Butler and Scarlett O'Hara, but with this charged eroticism. The composition is almost geometric. The eroticism lies in that suspension between passion and performance. Her tilted chin, the burning cigarette, they imply complicity, not pure submission. It's a climactic frame from a noir romance, loaded with narrative possibility, leaving you to imagine what came just before and what happens next.
Those descriptions really bring the paintings to life, allowing us to almost step inside them. Let's pull back slightly and consider some critical themes running through Vettriano's work. First, this really interesting dynamic where women are usually highly visible subjects, while the men are often hidden or obscured figures.
Yes, it is a striking pattern throughout his work. Women consistently command the visual center. They're illuminated, boldly displayed, while men are often obscured, cropped, peripheral. Their faces turned away, sometimes even cut right out of the frame, like the man in the parlor of temptation.
And the effect of that.
Well, this visual hierarchy undeniably makes the woman the brightest, most eye-catching element, whether through color or lighting. And this aligns your attention with the woman as the primary object of desire. She is objectified, yes, in a sense, but by being so visually dominant, Vettriano paradoxically grants her a kind of subjecthood. She becomes the undeniable star of this arrested frame.
And hiding the men.
That does a few things. It invites you, the viewer, to project yourself into that male role without the barrier of a distinct male identity. You become a sort of everyman observer, which simplifies identifying with the male gaze. Second, the hidden male often amplifies a sense of mystery, maybe power. An unseen observer often seems to hold the cards. In Man of Mystery, the man is literally out of the picture, yet he clearly controls the moment's unfolding. It can also comment on power structures in relationships. Often, the less exposed figure holds more power. However, the women's very visibility also consistently grants them agency. They actively drive the scenes with their poses, their presence. In Game On, the woman's receptive pose conveys just as much erotic charge, maybe even control, as the man's actions. Vettriano often presents scenarios where, yes, men act and women appear consistent with John Berger's famous insight, but he imbues the woman's appearance with such drama and emotional suggestion that she really transcends a flat reading. She becomes a complex narrative subject.
Given Vettriano's clear film noir influences, you might expect to see the classic femme fatale archetype more often. Is that really present in his work?
Intriguingly, no, not really. Vettriano's erotic scenes, while they are undeniably seductive, generally lack the malign intent or the overt power play of a true femme fatale. His women are alluring, absolutely, but they aren't depicted as scheming to manipulate men for some ulterior motive.
So that's a key difference from classic noir.
It's a significant divergence, yes. For example, the woman in On Parade. She openly invites a willing partner. There's no sense she's luring him to a grim fate, only perhaps to bed. She's inviting attention, not plotting a downfall. The women in paintings like Night Calls 2 or Game On seem to enjoy the erotic power play as an end in itself, not as a ruse for something darker.
They lack that manipulative edge.
They lack that agency of malice that defines the femme fatale. Instead, they often show a degree of vulnerability or even ambivalence. In Beautiful Losers II, the woman is visually caught between two men, but she isn't manipulating either. She appears emotionally conflicted. Vettriano, fundamentally, seems to celebrate erotic collaboration rather than conflict. He focuses on the anticipation, that intricate dance of seduction, not on someone getting hurt.
More romantic than cynical.
Exactly. His romantic heart means his works carry this underlying current of longing or emotional weight, which a truly cynical femme fatale would undermine. Even the dancer for money, while self-aware and autonomous, isn't portrayed as preying on anyone. And Vettriano's men aren't presented as hapless victims either. They seem like willing participants, getting exactly what they seek. Vettriano avoids moralizing his women. He portrays them not as cartoon villains, but as humanized figures, imperfect, longing, performing, vulnerable, powerful, but not truly malevolent.
Finally, let's discuss that interplay of voyeurism, complicity, and control in his art. How does Vettriano so effectively invite us to, well, peek into these intimate moments?
There's a very strong undercurrent of voyeurism, absolutely. You consistently feel like you're peeking into an intimate moment, and very often, as we've seen, a figure within the painting is also watching. Beautiful Losers II has that calmly smoking man observing the embrace. The parlor of temptation essentially puts you right in the man's shoes. In an imperfect past, voyeurism is made explicit with the standing figure overseeing things, and the woman bathed in that projected imagery.
And this raises questions about complicity.
Exactly. Are the characters themselves aware of and complicit in being observed? Often the answer seems to be yes. Many of Vettriano's women appear to knowingly perform for the gaze, both the gaze within the painting and your own gaze, the viewers. The dancer for money is practicing for an implied future viewer. The woman in On Parade clearly knows she's on display.
So the viewer becomes aware of their role.
Yes, this mirroring fosters a powerful sense of complicity between you and the painting. You become acutely aware of your role as a voyeur because Vettriano literally mirrors it within the scene. Now, control often seems to flow from who is watching, but Vettriano masterfully complicates this by having the women be active participants in the display. They retain a form of control by choosing to perform.
Can you give an example of that control?
On Parade demonstrates control through exhibition. She wields her sexuality knowingly. In Night Calls 11, the woman on the coffee table clearly controls the immediate situation, yet the man seems enthralled, passive, suggesting a mutual dynamic power exchange. Vettriano's scenarios acknowledge potential power imbalances, but they often show the person being watched knowingly yielding to it or playfully engaging with it. This creates a charged erotic tension without tipping over into cruelty.
And the props, like mirrors, reinforce this.
Right. He literalizes voyeurism with framed pictures, mirrors within his compositions, constantly reinforcing the theme. Ultimately, control is negotiated through gaze and performance. The male gaze might define the woman's role initially, but she often controls the male through the very desire she evokes. It's this loop of influence where the question, who's really in control here, remains enticingly unanswered. Your role as a voyeur adds that third dimension, making you complicit in the power games, and perhaps eliciting that slight thrill of guilt that intensifies the whole experience.
So putting it all together, what does this really mean for understanding Jack Vettriano's enduring, maybe even surprising appeal?
Well, I think Jack Vettriano's paintings, despite, lingering critical dismissal from some areas, are really masterful erotic storyboards. They are fundamentally a narrative at their core. Each one is a frozen moment, inviting your imagination to fill in those missing frames, effectively turning you into a co-author of the story.
And the anticipation is key.
Absolutely. His emphasis on anticipation over consummation is central to that erotic charge. His scenes consistently dwell in the in-between, that perpetual state of desire that, as Barthes has suggested, is often more alluring than any explicit reveal. Vettriano also navigates the complexities of the male gaze very adeptly. His women are displayed, yes, but they perform with this compelling agency, complicit in their own allure, creating a nuanced dance of voyeurism and control where you, the viewer, are undeniably implicated.
What's the cinematic feel?
Right, his cinematic aesthetics, so steeped in film noir, create atmosphere and drama. Yet his emotional landscape mostly avoids the cynicism of a true femme fatale narrative, often leaning instead towards a more romantic, almost wistful longing. And finally, those recurring motifs, the stilettos, stockings, red dresses, cigarettes, they form this rich visual vocabulary, each detail adding to the narrative in the sensual undercurrent.
So Vettriano invites us into this sort of midnight theater of desire where each canvas is like a stage, a proscenium arch, through which a sultry scene unfolds, and we find ourselves as both witness and maybe participant. His real achievement seems to be tapping into that universal story of longing and giving it such vivid visual form, both erotic and, in its own way, ennobling.
Indeed. I think as you step back from a Vettriano painting, you carry with you those unanswered questions, those heightened sensations the image provoked. He really does leave us wanting more. We remain, much like his characters often seem to be, suspended in that delicious moment of anticipation. And perhaps ultimately, that is the most erotic place to be.
What stands out to you about Vettriano's world? We invite you to explore your own missing frames and continue this deep dive. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
Thanks for listening to Mythos AI. Stay tuned for more concise insights. And remember to hit the like button and subscribe for future episodes.